Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, you're in for a fun time. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a trip starting over in Costa Rica, just a dream destination for billfish fishermen, and come back to Florida, go all around the state, and find out what's biting where. Now, last week we learned that the mullet population had made it as far south as Stewart, but they hadn't really pushed down to Miami yet. We'll find out if they moved on this last northeaster. We got another one coming that may well move them. Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, by Nosara Paradise Fishing, and by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. All right, we're going to check in with Craig Sutton, who I know is sitting on pins and needles because the time is finally here for Costa Rica to open back up to international travel. And boy, nobody's happier than you are. Craig, how we doing?
Man, you ain't kidding, Ricky. I'm a happy camper right now. I just booked my ticket. I'm leaving the 16th. And we are open to Florida and Texas and everybody in the USA.
Has there been any trips down there yet? Anybody fishing down there yet?
No.
Ooh,
you know, they're
fish
all
are going
getting
to
the
be
boats
hungry.
ready. Oh, my gosh, I can't wait. It's going to be insane. We're putting the harvester in the water on Friday, the day I get there. And I'm going to be fishing Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and coming home Wednesday.
A week from Friday. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna fish the lead here Thursday.
Good deal. Good deal. Yep. I think it might be good. Of course, you don't care anything about Atlantic sailfish, all those big monster billfish you get to pull on, but
yeah, I don't care about.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Just stop.
There's some out there. They were out there. I fished it a week ago, just past Saturday. There's some out there when we were out there.
Yep. I take my little Talica 16s with little light live bait rods, and they're about as much fun as you can have on them now. I ain't kidding you.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about that. But we get so many sails in Costa. They're almost a nuisance for me. I get a little tainted, just catching, 10, 15 of them a day. In fact, I'll give the rod to the maid. You fight that fish, man. I'll save my stuff for the marlin.
Our thanks to Craig Sutton for talking with us tonight and letting us know we never need to talk to him again.
Have I become a fishing snob?
Yeah, you've become a fishing snob. Don't rip my sailfish, Craig. Don't rip Miss Debbie, and don't rip my sailfish, and we'll be okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll never do it again, brother.
Craigie, we appreciate it. I look forward to a good fishing report from you not very long.
All right, brother, man. Thanks, Ricky.
Thanks,
Y'all
Craig.
have a good one.
All right, let's get started with the state of Florida, my home state. We're going to check in up in the Northeast with Captain David Voorhees. First off, I want to know about the mullet run. Has it left Mayport yet? Talk to me, Captain David Voorhees.
Well, from what I can see, Captain Ricky, it's still on pretty good, pretty strong, pretty hot and heavy, you might want to say. We had some high water this week. I was sort of afraid it wasn't going to flood there Friday. It didn't quite get enough water, but then Saturday, the winds clopped on around. We got a little bit more of a northeaster. It pushed the water in and it held it in, and we got a pretty good flood both Saturday and Sunday. And it probably flooded today, but the weather has just sort of been the fisherman's enemy this week. The winds have been stout out of the northeast. We've sort of been getting rain off and on. But I tell you, the inshore fishing has been still pretty darn good. And reports of some really nice trout being caught, even in Jacksonville and even south into St. Augustine area. Not a lot of numbers, but some decent size. And it is so funny, Rick, these trout are so skinny because these fish have rode out. Their heads just don't fit their bodies. It's really strange. But red fishing is still been gangbuster, just absolute gangbuster, both in the shallow water and in the deep water. Water temperatures way, way, way down. We've had in the last 2 weeks well close to a 10-degree temperature drop. We saw temperatures this week in the 73 degrees, which is quite a drop from 3 or 4 weeks earlier.
It seems to me like we were at 90 degrees almost 3-4 weeks ago,
weren't we?
It was
in the high 80s. We were, Rick. I'm thinking this next flood on the new moon, not this week coming up, but the following week, I think it's going to be our last one. I think after that, the water's temperature is going to get too cold. This front's getting pushed back up north with this southern flow. We're going to supposedly get another southern push, which means warmer air, humid air. We should be getting this week. So I don't see any hard cold fronts, but I got a feeling this is going to be our last good flooded grass, your last opportunity to get out and get a tailing red in the grass. When it gets too cold, these crabs bury up. But the big story inshore, Rick, has been the bull reds. It's just been gangbuster. You know, we had a big tournament this week full of bull or whatever it is. And there are guys reporting catching 15, almost 20 of these big bull reds that day. So most of the captains I talked to, they had plenty of hookup, landed plenty of fish. A lot of times we talk about it and we go out there and we're happy if we catch 5 or 6 of these bull reds. But it seems like this weekend they were really chewing. They picked a great weekend. The weather wasn't gorgeous, but you know what? The catching was on fire. And from what I understand, along with the bull reds are a lot of bull sharks. So, you know, if you're out there fishing for those bull reds, be very, very careful when you're releasing that fish into the water. Some of the captains I talked to, they like to go ahead and vent the fish right away, get them up, get the photograph, get the fish vented, and shoot them down into the water. And usually they have a pretty good success rate. They take off right after that. But if you're going to hold the fish alongside the boat, be very, very cautious. Be careful. They're here in the St. Johns River. They're mainly night feeders, but I think when these big giant bull reds are here spawning, I think they go to feeding on those guys, and I think they're being fed pretty good.
David, you know, that's an interesting point. Obviously, we're losing some of the bull reds that are exhausted, and we release them, and you know good and well the bull sharks are jumping on them when they get the chance.
Oh, absolutely.
But even though, I mean, redfish is a great success story because there are so many big breeders, and why we can't learn that with red snapper and put a slot in place and be able to do the same thing, just send those big breeders back down. Yes, some of them aren't going to make it. We understand that. But if we don't target them to put them in the box, which is just what we do with big bull reds, you think about the tournament, the take on that tournament was minimal because obviously we can't keep the bull reds. So why we can't do that with red snapper, I don't know. And isn't it interesting how the full moon provided us with another northeaster?
Yeah, it sure is. It wasn't a real super bad one, but it was still a northeaster nonetheless. And talking about regulations, there's stuff coming down the pipe with the flounder fishery. We probably don't have time to get into it today, but maybe next week we could talk about it. There is a meeting this week, so maybe I'll know a little bit more next week about the flounder, but it sounds like they keep moving the goalpost on us. But it looks like for the recreational guys, we might get an extra 2 weeks of closure that they want to add on to the 1 month.
Yeah, and the bad news is it's the last 2 weeks of October, which is as good as we get for flounder fishing. David, as always, we appreciate it. We'll look forward to talking to you next week.
All right, Rick.
Appreciate it. Now, let's get on 95, pull down south, and check in with our buddy Jim Ross. Jim, are you with us?
I'm here, bud.
Hey, Jimmy, let me ask you a question.
What's that?
Friday, I guess. When was the full moon? No, it was Sunday? Was it yesterday?
Probably.
Yeah, and here came a northeaster. Are they related?
I can't say no, but I can't say yes. I don't have enough information. I didn't really study it.
Okay. I've always believed, and the old timers have always told me, that the fall northeasters all come on the full moon.
It's possible.
I'm telling you, the years that I've watched it, it sure seems to be likely.
I'll have to keep an eye on that.
Do it. I won't call it 100%, but I will call it likely. All right. How's the fishing been in the East Central? You guys still got plenty of mullet?
There's still mullet here. The inlets have still been strong. You know, redfish inside the inlets, even down into the New Smyrna and Edgewater area, has been strong with the mullet run this week. They're still getting tarpon in that Edgewater area, the backwaters there from Catalisa Creek all the way down to right around Orange Island. And, some redfish, some trout, some jacks mixed in with them as well. If you're throwing cut bait a little farther south down in the lagoon, of course, you're dealing with quite a few catfish. But the benefit to throwing that is that the water down in there has gotten much dirtier. You know, we talked about those algae blooms, and that water down in that section of the lagoon is not nearly as clean or tidally influenced as it is up where the bigger bulls and tarpon and things of that nature are up in the New Smyrna Edgewater area. So that cut bait's really coming in handy when you get down from Oak Hill and then down into the Mosquito Lagoon proper. Haulover Canal, which is the canal that leads between the Mosquito Lagoon and the Indian River, has been having quite a good bite here this last couple of days as well. There's been some big redfish in there. There's been quite a few snook, and even though the water's really difficult to sight fish or see anything in, you've got some laydowns in there, you've got some rocky edges. If you're drifting shrimp through there, especially first thing in the morning or last thing in the evening, or at night, if you're in there, actually running shrimp lights at night, there's been a lot of snook in that area. And some of those snook are running up into the 30, 31 inch range. So there's some nice ones.
Good deal. Yeah, it's nice fish. Have you heard anything from offshore or anybody able to get out?
Haven't heard a word.
I suspect there's some sailfish in your area because we've had so much north wind. But I guess it's going to have to lay down a little bit, which looks to me like Thursday for the first day to lay down for your area. So here's hoping for that.
I've got my fingers crossed. Yeah.
I'm with you. Okay, buddy. All right, Jimmy, as always, we appreciate the heck out of it. Take care, bud.
All righty. Bye-bye now.
We got a special guest for the Southeast. None other than the editor of Florida Sportsman magazine, Jeff Weekly. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Rick. Trying to stay dry.
Good. Well, thanks for crossing media. Welcome to the Florida Sportsman podcast. We do this every week, and we have a lot of fun doing it. What have you heard in your stretch of the area there around Stewart? How's your fishing been for the last week or so?
Well, I guess the big news here locally is rain, and more rain. I've been watching the level of my pond come up and watching the bass tearing up the dragonflies and different things. And I've got water in the Jensen Beach Boulevard, so we might be trolling for bass behind our trucks pretty soon, but it should be coming down soon.
You're right. Bass do love a dragonfly. I thought that was all superstition because that old Winslow Homer picture of the bass, that painting that he did, the bass grabbing the dragonfly. But that's a real thing, isn't it? Bass and dragonflies.
It absolutely is. I can sit here in my kitchen, look out the window, and watch it.
That's cool. How about your fishing? It's the time of year where you should start seeing some dolphins, shouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm liking the weather forecast. October is a tricky month for open boaters. It's this is usually when we get these big high pressure systems and a lot of strong east-northeast wind. And of course, sometimes we get some, run-ins with tropical systems. This week we got a good southeast flow, which is favorable for dolphin fishing. And what I really like to see is toward the weekend, I think we're supposed to get a pretty good slackening in those winds.
Good.
Looks like Saturday and Sunday might be, 5 to 10 knots and real good conditions offshore.
That's outstanding. Now, I got to tell you, Jeff, I have looked for a good dolphin year for the longest time. I will even travel if I hear that they're red hot somewhere else. I tell you, up in Northeast Florida, where I do most of my dolphin fishing out of Jacksonville and St. Augustine, it's been off for a while now.
That's definitely the case. And I'm hearing that up and down the line, Rick. Blair Wickstrom, in the current issue of the magazine, October issue, his call to action column, he addresses that subject right up front and talks about the decline in landings over the last 10, 20 years. But more importantly, Blair brings up shortage of good information about effort data, which is something that the fisheries managers really need to have to get a good firm grip on the trends. Anecdotally, longtime fishermen would all agree that the fishing has been poor. And, the reasons are kind of subject to speculation, but it's definitely high time that fisheries managers get a handle on it. Such an important fishery.
I got to tell you, Jeff, Don Hammond probably did more research into dolphin than anybody ever. And he told me one time that every year the ocean creates billions of baby dolphin, and that if there's enough food and shelter, a good year, 2% will survive, and in a bad year, only 1% will survive. Well, man, it seems to me like we've had plenty of sargassum, which is where they usually hide and feed and everything, for the last 3-4 years, but I sure haven't seen an uptick in numbers of dolphin.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern. It's vexing, to say the least. But there are places for people to comment about their observations, and I think it would be a good time for fishing clubs or guides or just to the general public to let the government know how important that fishery is to you, and let them know what kind of trends you've seen. If you'd like to go to the South Atlantic Fishery Council website, go to safmc.net and look for the pull down for public comment, and it'll bring up some of the different management plans that they're working on. And there's a place for public comment for the dolphin wahoo management, and that'd be a great place for people to voice their concerns.
Gosh, I just don't. That's a complicated one. Some of them I think I can figure out. Red snapper, I think I know what would be a good solution and such, but But dolphin, the problem with them is they are totally complete pelagics. I mean, they don't stay in shallow water. They're not coastal where we can keep a handle on them. I mean, if you find a board in 50 miles offshore or 150 miles offshore, it's going to have a dolphin under it. So, I don't know what the answer is going to be for us there, but I agree with you that we got to do something.
Yeah, if they can get a better handle on what's going on here, in our waters in terms of the relationship between landings and effort. If effort is fairly stable and the landings are declining, that's probably a sign that, something's going on upstream of us or perhaps downstream of us, but perhaps in other waters. So we really need to get a handle on that. I've actually talked to some of the people with the Caribbean Fishery Management Council in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and they're just now starting to study their dolphin fishery down there. And that would be a good place to be looking because, the fish that come through here, they pass through that region as well. It's sort of a circuit that they go through. As you mentioned, Don Hammond's studies, he was one of the first to document that. Dolphins don't live very long, but a dolphin that's lived 1-2 years, it may have made a circuit really of the western North Atlantic and then back through the Caribbean. So it's gone through the untold nations of fisheries fleet. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see. But I'm going to fish for them this weekend.
That's great.
I think they're coming.
I may have to join you if it lays down enough. Hey, Jeff, last time I was down there last week, the mullet were going strong, and there were fish all over the beach and in the rivers chewing on them. Are they still around?
They're still around, Rick. We've got a mix of the local big silver mullets, and we've also got the small little fingers that have showed up, and the snook and tarpon have been cartwheeling through those bait pods.
I'm going to tell you, that's my favorite time of year, and they're still pouring out of the inlet in Jacksonville, so you got a few more days, maybe even a few more weeks of those things coming down your beach.
That's right. And with those dolphin in mind, I'll probably start the day off Saturday or Sunday cast netting some live mullet because live mullet are great baits for dolphin. And it's also a good grouper bait, too, on some of the wrecks offshore. That'd be another good bet.
You know what I love to see? I love to see a dolphin or a sailfish get after a live mullet because it's quite a show. That mullet is very good at getting away from that predator.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Incidentally, we saw a sailfish the other day in 11 feet of water.
How about that?
Yeah, I was following an eagle ray. Don't ask me why.
That's great. A couple weeks ago, I threw plugs at a pot of sailfish in about 25 feet of water off the Jensen Beach. I had one eat a topwater.
No.
He shook loose.
Oh,
yeah.
No kidding. Did you get him in the air? Did he jump?
He grabbed it and started off on a good run, and the hook's pulled out.
Doggone.
It's hard to get a little hook in those hard beaks, as you know.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Cap, we appreciate it so much, Jeff. Thank you for joining us, and please tell me we can check with you again.
Sounds good. I'd be happy to do that, Rick. Take care.
Thank you. Jeff Weekly, the editor of Florida Sportsman magazine, with a great Southeast report for us. What a great guy. Let's move on down south, cruise along South Beach to the mayor of South Beach, Alan Sherman. Are you with us?
Hey, Rick.
What's going on in Miami?
Well, we finally got out of the rain.
Good.
Now, you guys are probably in the rain.
We got rain.
We're
Yep.
sunshiny. Got a little bit of a breeze right now, but we had a whole weekend full of rain, which kept a lot of people off the water, quite a bit of wind. But the guys that got out had a little bit of action. We still got this migration going on with the bait fish, and we're seeing schools of finger mullet moving into the bay.
Good deal.
Got some bigger mullet moving along the beaches as well. But if you get up early, get out on the beach at sunrise, you got a couple of hours where you can target snook and tarpon and the jacks, maybe even some pompano that are underneath the schools of mullet. Get out there with some large artificial lures. One I've been using, made by Savage Tackle, it's called Pulse Tail Baitfish, and it's a swim bait, and it looks similar to a large pilchard. So, it's not a mullet bait, but it looks pretty close to some of these baits that are migrating. The company does make some mullet soft plastics as well, and they work really well. But if you use these artificials that resemble the bait fish that are in the water, really good chance that you're going to hook up on some legal-sized snooks, some gigantic tarpon, Jack Crevelle's 10-pounders or better that are following these schools of mullet. But you only have a couple of hours, in the early morning before the lifeguards chase you out. And then again, you can get out there after they are off duty, which is probably around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and you get a couple more hours to target these fish. Otherwise, you have to fish the inlets off the jetties or fish the piers. And the pier fishing has been pretty good with bluefish and some Spanish mackerel showing up. And of course, you have the snook, the tarpon, and the possibilities of getting in on some pompano Most of the pompano they're catching right now are small, getting them on jigs, fish bites, and some other scented artificials. But the bigger ones are on their way. Here the guys are catching them just a few, maybe 50, 60 miles further north of us. Moving offshore, there's kingfish out there. There's been some big amberjacks on the artificial reefs, anywhere from 180 to 240. They're eating live pinfish and big threadfin herring, goggle eyes, little bonitas. And there's some nice mutton snappers on the bottom in that area as well. And it's just not one area. It's almost all the artificial reefs are holding fish. So, if that's something you enjoy doing, move on out there, use your depth recorder to locate the structure. And if you see some good markings on there, there's a good chance the fish you want to catch are there. We're seeing a few sailfish showing up now with the bait fish coming down. Not a lot, but more than we had before. Tons of bonitas. For light tackle fishing, bonita fishing can be, something, throw an artificial fly, chum them up with live pilchards, and they're a lot of fun. There's been blackfin tunas as well, mostly small ones, but a few decent ones, 10 pounds, 15 pounds. So there's a few of them out there, maybe even more than a few if you happen to get in on a school. Dolphin fishing is only mediocre. There's some out there. They're out in the blue water. They're all along weed lines and under frigate birds and then floating debris. And those are the kind of things you want to look for when you get out there. There's not a ton of them, but the guys that are putting in the time are catching some decent fish, 4 to 8 pounds, I guess, maybe a few 12, 15 pounders as well. Then in the bay, we're starting to see bluefish in there and some small Spanish mackerel, of course, the jack crevalles and ladyfish, some barracudas, and there are a few snook that are cooperating in the bays, but most of the snook fishing is being done around the ocean inlets when the mullet schools move in or out. Down in South Bay, there's been a few fish, a mixture of jack crevalles, yellow jacks, barracudas, small sharks, mutton snappers, groupers, a lot of small fish, but a few legal ones. So, we've got some fishing. You just got to get out there and give it a shot.
That's a fantastic report, and we appreciate it. I don't know if you knew this or not, but we started a new segment called Listeners' Questions, where if somebody wants a specific question about an area, they let us know, and then we ask you. And this week pertained to your area. You gave us a report either last week or a couple weeks ago about big mutton snapper hitting a surface lure.
Well, that was that pulse-tail baitfish swim bait that I was using. It's made by a company called Savage Lures. They're mostly a freshwater tackle business, but they're breaking into the saltwater side, and they're really getting really intricate in how they're making these baits. It's kind of cool. A lot of colors, a lot of reflections, iridescence, and a lot of detail.
Steve P. had emailed Shelby and wanted to ask you that question. Give me the name of it one more time.
Pulse-tail baitfish.
Pulse-tail baitfish. Bait. Okay. That's your go-to for muttons on the surface?
Well, it's just a lure that I threw to them, and it worked. Mm-hmm. Not just once or twice, but a few times.
That'll do it.
And that's enough for me, So you give it a shot. If you can't find it in the local tackle store, go online and take a look at their catalog. They have plenty of baits that are worthy of purchasing to give a shot. Surface lures, deep lures, you name it.
Alan, thank you so much, and thanks for answering Steve P's question. If you've got a question that you would like one of our Action Spotter to answer, just email it to Shelby, SHELBY, at floridasportsman.com. Alan, we look forward to talking with you next week.
Me too. I'll see you then.
Thank you, buddy. All right, now we're going to my favorite port in Florida, Islamorada. I'd rather be there than anywhere. Let's check in with the captain of the Broad-Minded, Nick Stanczyk. Nick, are you there?
I'm here, Rick. How you doing?
Doing excellent. Tell me what's going on the Broad-Minded.
It's been pretty windy the last few days, but we had a few good fishing trips the past week.
Well, that's that time of year. We start losing days to weather this time of year. What did you catch on the trips you did make?
I fished 3 days the past week here. The first day was tough on the swordfish. We didn't catch any bites, but we did catch a bunch of blackfin tuna as well. 20 tunas up to about 15 pounds. And then the following day, we did the same thing. Caught a bunch of blackfin tunas up to about 18 pounds. And we got James' first ever swordfish. Not a huge one, but about a 90-pounder, so plenty big enough for dinner. And we swordfished the rest of the day, and in the afternoon between the squalls coming, I was a swordfish just about 90 pounds. So not a monster, but a perfect eating one.
I got the impression from talking with Captain Alan Sherman up in Miami that the mahi bite had slowed down quite a bit. Have you seen that?
It has, yeah. taken a few on the last couple of days, but I'll say early last week it was really tough. Then for about 3 days it was good. Boats had 20, 30, 40 fish. Mostly schoolers, some gaffers. A little before that, and it got tougher the last couple of days. I fished again today. We didn't see any dolphin coming or going, but it was rough. It was 3 to 6 foot all day with some 7 and 8 footers rolling through. But we did catch a 129-pound swordfish for Astrid.
I would guess you were glad you were on a Freeman in that weather.
Yeah, I probably would have rather been home, but if they want to go in at 4 to 6 footers with a few bigger ones, I would take them. But I was glad we got a fish.
Gotcha. All right. Hey, listen, Nick, thanks so much for the report. We look forward to talking with you next week, if that's all right.
Yep, we'll be here, Rick. Thanks.
Now, let's pull on over to 10,000 Islands and talk to the mayor of each and every last one of them, Captain Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing today, Rick?
Doing great. The only way I could be better is if I was in 10,000 Islands.
Well, come on down. They're biting. Calendar's turned, Rick. I mean, it's October, and it's all about redfish right now. You can't do anything wrong right now. Redfish and October are synonymous with the 10,000 Islands, and we just roll out the red carpet for them. They seem to show up every single year at this time, and they're fairly easy to catch just because they're concentrated and they're focused right from Marco Island all the way past the Shark River on all the outside points and pockets, lots of shoal areas, and you can just make a big milk run of this stuff. We kind of have these oddities where fish have been kind of concentrated a little bit, and it was kind of showing hints of fall. And it's finally here. We finally got that water temperature down, and it's starting to roll. So you can catch them just about any way you want right now. So it's hard for us to concentrate on anything else besides redfish on the inshore side.
Steve, let me ask you a question. Do you get the big spawners down there?
We do, but we don't get them inshore or even relatively near shore either. Generally, that's a big bycatch for us offshore where, you'll be offshore grouper fishing or snapper fishing. You just happen to stumble upon, I should say a school happens to stumble upon you if you're at anchor or slowly drifting. But yeah, they'll pass right through. And, everyone asks that. Why does certain areas like Venice, Louisiana and areas like that have these just giant 40-inch redfish, these 36 to 48, inch fish? And what we kind of see in our area and kind of throughout Southwest Florida, it seems like once the fish hit that lower 30-inch range, they go offshore and they become essentially a pelagic fish. It's almost two different styles of fish. Once they retire, if you will, from growing here in the backcountry, they kind of disappear offshore.
See, that's so funny because in Jacksonville, my hometown, the exact opposite happens.
That's crazy.
Yeah, when the big bulls are ready to spawn, they all come into the river. And I'm telling you right now, the bottom of the channel of the St. John's River is paved with 40 to 50-inch redfish. I mean, one right after another. I used to have a buddy of mine that did them for charters, and he guaranteed you 100 if you fished a 6-hour charter with him.
Wow.
And
that's a tall order there.
He would do nothing. He and his mate would do nothing but stand at the back of the boat and unhook redfish and put baits on and send you back down.
It's crazy. You think about that, though. I've always tried to equate this. Our area sets up really similar to kind of like a Venice, Louisiana, albeit, the Mississippi River is a super fertile body of water, dumps into the Gulf, and creates this amazing fertile breeding ground and habitat for them. The natural watershed of Florida is north to south, and then obviously flowing through the Everglades into the 10,000 Islands through countless tributaries. Why is it that we can't duplicate that? I mean, the water is just as fertile, if not more. It's really odd.
Yep, and no, you are right, and every area is different, and we understand that. But before we let you go, we had a listener send you a question. We've started a new segment called Listeners' Questions for you to answer on the air. And what George King wanted to know was, what time of year should he come to the 10,000 Islands if he wants to catch cobia?
It's really going to be in about another month. To be safe, I would say November. My number one would be probably May.
Oh, really?
Yeah. May, we seem to always see an influx of that. And maybe it's because we're spending more time out on the nearshore wrecks and reefs chasing permits. I'm talking about wrecks and reefs that ultimately can be in 14 to 25 feet of water. So you're not really having to go very far.
Not very
shore,
far.
But so really those 2 months.
May and November. Outstanding. All right. Before I let you go real quick, have you had north wind the last few days?
We have had a little bit. It's kind of like northeasterly for us.
All right.
That's kind of been our deal.
We're on a full moon. Are those two things related?
We've talked about this in the past, haven't we?
Yeah.
I fully agree. It is.
I'm a believer.
You and I think, are the only ones in sync with this. It always seems to sock you in the mouth, and it seems to hold true every month.
The fall northeasters come on the full moon. I absolutely believe it. All right, Cap, we appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
Oh, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
You got it. Thank you, Steve. The hunt for Red October is on. Let's swing a little bit further over into the Southwest and check with our buddy Greg Stamper from Snook Stamp Charters. Greg, you guys catching any redfish?
You know, the Red October has been on for a while now, and it just continues to get better and better. Honestly, if you wanted to film a TV show, this was the week to do it in my neck of the woods. There's been lots of days with lots of guys throughout my area catching 10, 15, 20 fish on a trip. And we're not talking about small fish. These closures have definitely given us a lot of quality fish that would have already been taken out of our population. Now they're all in the upper slot, and many of them are over slot this week. And they're definitely going to be in schools. This is not going to change for a while.
There's a lesson to be learned in that, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. We had a fantastic week in the back bays because there was some wind and some weather that we had to deal with near shore and stuff. I did a couple of trips this week, one that I had to go shark fishing. So I went out early in the morning for them so I could catch them some nice ladyfish and bluefish stuff for cut bait. And my first two casts that morning, I kept catching pompano, which was really kind of annoying when you're trying to catch ladyfish. But that's another great sign that things are going to be fantastic this time of year.
Oh, that's great. That is great news indeed. Have you heard anything from offshore at all?
So the offshore guys had 1 or 2 days where they could get out. It did get a little bit sporty. There was one day where it did lay down a little bit. The red grouper bite has been very, very good. My buddy Captain Sam and Steve at my marina reported that a couple of their boys got schooled pretty hard on some big gag grouper, and they're going to go back out there next time and see if they can get those again. The red snapper bite continues to be really good for guys who are getting out deep, but you do have to go deep. When I mean deep, I mean like 50 miles from our shoreline. But those fish are out there, and there's lots of them. The lane snapper and the mangrove snapper and the porgies in the near waters, I'm talking about 70 feet, so we're talking about 25 miles to 30, 35 miles from my neck of the woods, has been very good, and that's a quality bite no matter what you're doing.
Greg, it seems to me like the mangrove snapper have been good all around the state this year. Would you concur with that?
I couldn't believe I caught some 15-inch snappers in the back bay,
right,
in the Cerro Bay this week. And for us in the back bay, a big mangrove snapper is like 12, maybe 13 inches. I caught some fish that were probably 1.5 pounds in places that I wasn't going to expect to catch those type of fish. So the guys who've been in between in the near shore areas have been doing very well on 1 to 2 pound snappers. The permit bite was very good until this last flow. We got a bunch of cool weather that came through, and I'm not sure if that permit bite's going to hold steady, but it may. It wasn't that cold, but what's getting better and better, and I'm seeing more and more of from the guys that are reporting them, are the tarpon are coming from up north. I'm sure Ray's going to tell you that they're going right through his neighborhood right now.
Should be. All right. Hey, Cap, listen, we appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
Absolutely. Tight lines, Rick. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Greg. Captain Greg Stamper, along with all of our action spotters, is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat Spain offshore hybrids? You want to check out youngboats.com.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to his name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. All right, let's move it on around now and stop in the West Central region and check in with our buddy Ray Markham. Ray, how are you?
Captain Ricky, I'm doing just fine, sir. Nice weather for a good long week, and the fishing's been good. People been catching a lot of fish. Looks like we got a little bit of wind coming, but other than that, everything's just fine.
You know, Ray, I talked to Greg Stamper and Steve Dahl just in the last two reports, and they both feel like the closure has had a huge impact, and they're having outstanding red fishing and even pompano fishing. You seeing the same thing? Have you become a big fan of the period that it was closed? I mean, it still is, but
I think it's something I think we had to do. The numbers were just decimated. I mean, there were millions and millions of fish floating everywhere, belly up. And I could tell a difference when on an average trip we'd go out and catch anywhere from 30 to 100 fish. And then you go out again and you catch like 4 or 5 fish.
Yeah.
Something's wrong, particularly if you're targeting specific species where you know they should be. With that in mind, I think FWC did the right thing. I really do think that some next year, June 1st, I think you'll probably see some openings again. Of course, I don't think you'll see a snook opening since it's the regular time for it to close.
Right. Right. You'll be back in reds and trout this time next year, you think?
Well, I hope so. The time for the opening isn't strictly a peak time for either one of the species. I think the spring time is really the period for trout, March and April. And as far as redfish are concerned, we're in it right now. Us through about November are really prime months, I think, for redfish around here. But people are still catching tarpon. So, I mean, it's not so cold that the tarpon have all tried to run south or go up rivers or anything like that. And they're still catching some snook out on the beaches and whatnot. So they're a little bit everywhere. We haven't had anything real drastic as far as changes in weather to get cool, but this little cool snap has been really nice. It's been comfortable. Water temperature was 78 before it came through, and there were spots that it bumped down to about 74, but that's really perfect water temperature for just about everything that swims around here.
Yes, sir. They could leave it 74 all year. It'd be all right with me.
Well, not if I'm going swimming in it.
Have you heard anything from offshore at all?
Yeah, buddy, the Spanish mackerel are just lighting up a fire. I'm telling you, I really think it's not too far from seeing a big kingfish run, too. You know, the guys that are fishing off of Hernando north of us are seeing pretty good action with Spanish, and they're catching a few kings. But the majority of the kings that are being caught are caught in deeper water. They're a little bit cooler, and they're sitting around 70 to 72 degree water temperature, where, like I say, we're sitting probably closer to like 78 in the Gulf nearshore water. So prime temperature is out a little bit deeper yet, but when that water temperature just drop inshore, these Spanish mackerel just come in and just whack the bait. That's what they're really good for.
Good deal. Well, let's hope the ocean stays calm enough for them to do it. All right, Raymond, please tell me we can check in with you next week.
Good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'll be here.
All right, now we're going to pull around the state a little bit. Let's check in with Captain William Toney and see what's going on in the Big Bend. William, how are you?
Doing good, enjoying this fine evening out here. Getting a little more muggier than it has been with all the tropical stuff we got offshore in the Gulf out here.
Yeah, we're supposed to have a little heat wave coming through in Northeast Florida. I kind of got spoiled with that cool weather. I like that no air conditioner at nice, cool evening.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like that electric bill that'll be coming at the end of the month be just a little bit cheaper, too.
Oh, yeah, I just got a fat one for last month, but I expected for last month. That's the hottest month of the year.
Absolutely.
Tell me about your fishing, William.
2 days ago, I was out there in my boat, and our water temperature on the flats, believe it or not, this was out there in Homosassa Bay, 72 degrees.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's the prime water temperature right around in there for all our inshore species. Plus, good reports of all the way up and down the Big Bend of the inshore grouper bite. I even had a good angling buddy of mine out there trout fishing off of Crystal River around Gomez Rock and catching a keeper gag grouper in 3 foot of water. And Gomez Rock is not, it's nothing that's special except unless you run it over. So it's really nothing there except just a spot on a map to avoid. Drifting past it, swinging for trout, popping cork, caught himself a 26-inch gag grouper, 3 foot of water.
Really?
He put it in a boat and went on home. He said, that's enough meat.
Well, you know what the amazing thing to me about that is, William? He was fishing, I'm assuming, with trout tackle.
Yep. And see, the thing is, there's a lot of Gomez rocks that pretty much dot all the way from Tampa north up to Steenahatchee. And I don't know who Gomez was, but he must have hit every one of them. But we have a Gomez rock pile just off of kind of Mangrove Point, due west of it, off of Crystal River there, and it's marked on charts. In fact, there's a couple white PVC poles. So any anglers out there, you see the white PVC pole, just avoid them. Now we have Rock Island Channel, which is kind of a locally marked channel, but they're pretty much in a line, and you'll recognize them. But these are out there in the middle of kind of nowhere. But trout fish around the area is pretty good, and that's what he was doing, and lucked out, caught that keeper gag grouper. Now, other guys throwing plugs, starting out 8 to 14 foot of water, been getting a lot of keeper gags here lately, too.
Well, see, now I need to have a talk with that guy, because you should never take home a grouper that is so dumb that he won't swim into the rocks when he's hooked on trout tackle. Because that's the one we need to spawn, William. We need more stupid grouper.
Exactly. And you know what? About a week and a half ago now, true story, sitting there, we're looking for triple tail. We're along some markers, and I spot a real nice one. We throw over there. The guy hooks up on it, and so we're drifting toward the marker, fighting, which would have been a keeper triple tail. A big grouper comes up, grabs the cork that is attached to the triple tail's mouth, and starts shaking it like a bulldog. And this is about 6 foot of water. And in the meantime, about a 40-inch cobia starts circling around him like just trying to join in on the party. The grouper finally breaks the triple tail off and then notices us staring at him with the cork in his mouth, spits it out, and runs back down the marker. So we hooked the cobia, fought him for about 15 minutes, and finally lost him on light tackle. And I just said, well, that was the craziest thing I ever saw. Now, the story gets even better. I'm back at McCrae's bait house here, cleaning my fish with my clients, and another captain comes in, and he goes, you won't believe what we caught today, William. I'm like, well, I got a good story for you. He goes, no, we got a 26-inch gag grouper. We were wasting time chucking jigs right up against the channel markers to see if we could hook a triple tail, and the fellow in my boat just caught this 26-inch gag grouper out there in the middle of nowhere. And I said, I bet it was marker 6. He goes, how do you know? I said, I know that fish.
William?
Yep.
Drugs will kill you. If you hallucinated and dreamed up that story, you need to leave that crack pipe alone, buddy. That ain't.
Well, meth, crack, or nothing had nothing to do with this story, but God's honest truth. So, the thing we were talking about, that grouper not running toward a rock, is they were just out and away, away from structure, and being lucky enough that a keeper grouper away from structure, pretty much you could whip them on light tackle. It's just when they got their home nearby, not even 60-pound braid can handle them sometimes.
Sure. Oh, I know it. They isn't that crazy? He got that fish, and all the fish had to do is run around the marker, and the day was over for him.
He hooked it on 10-pound braid, and the fish ran the wrong way, away from the marker, and they landed it. But, another good fish that will definitely break you off inshore that's biting real good here on the Big Bend all the way up toward Steenahatchee. They're getting some, but Cedar Key South's a little bit better, and that's snook, and the bite's been on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tell you what, snook and grouper. It's funny how different fish have different tactics, but snook and grouper went to the same school, buddy. They know what to do. Find a piece of structure and get around it, and you'll be free.
Anything, that's the thing. Our snook have been moving in from the outer keys. You're going to find them more around the creek mouths or passes or deep places in the river where there's like a rocky shoreline and a deep drop off. That high outgoing tide always seems to trigger the best bite.
Good deal. Cap, we appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be right here in downtown Homosassa, and hopefully got a deer story to tell you.
Tell you what, I want to hear a deer story, and I want to come over there and catch a grouper on a trout rod. I'd like that, buddy.
Yeah, I can't guarantee that, but every now and again, magic happens. Maybe I'll find, like the dumb grouper, I'm going to find that dumb buck that finally just gives me a chance.
Yep, I'm going to come over there and try and catch that triple tail that's still carrying that cork around.
Exactly.
Thanks, William. We appreciate it.
All right. Have a great week.
Now let's pull up into Northwest Florida and talk with our buddy, Captain Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Captain Rick, we're doing just peachy up here in North Florida today.
Just peachy? That ain't bad at all. Well, tell me about your fishing. Has it been good?
Well, fishing's still been good for the days that guys can get out. We got a couple of guys that hit some really nice jacks and some vermilion snapper. Not much on the pelagic side. Most guys are not being able to get too far offshore. But for those guys that can get to that 15 to 20 mile range and get into those still vermilion snapper, they are doing really well. So as far as fishing goes, you got to be able to get out, but the fishing's good.
Kevin, I've always wondered, is our fishing better in the fall because our fishing's better, or is it better because we all have to stay at the dock 2 days out of every 3? So when you pull up on the fish, they haven't been hit in a long time.
My answer to that question would be yes.
Yeah, I knew you were going there. Yep. It certainly plays a role in it when we can't fish for a month at a time, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And I believe also as this water's cooling off because it has dropped approximately 10 degrees over the last month, the areas that I have fished. And when I see that water temperature drop, some of those fish start to move in a little bit closer. So I think it puts them in range of guys that aren't real comfortable venturing out more than about 15 miles. And as the water continues to cool, those grouper will move in on the shallows just like they do over in the Big Bend area. And we can start to get those and still be able to see land.
Good deal. Have you heard anything inshore at all?
Inshore's still been really quiet. We got an awful lot of fresh water around, an awful lot of what I call iced tea colored water.
Yep.
So there's a few guys out there now and then getting some flounder, whiting, and things like that. But nothing really to write home about, as the old saying goes.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's been tough for that reason all over the state. The shrimp in Northeast Florida got run out of the river way too early this year. We usually see them start to leave the river in November. Well, the river got so fresh they had to leave. It was September when they left, and they're tiny. I mean, they never got a chance to grow up. The shrimp boats are actually staying at the dock because they've sold all the 50-count shrimp they can sell. I mean, nobody wants them. Everybody wants the 10 to 16s, and that ain't happening right now.
Oh, I understand that. The water tables all around the area here are high. The lower ends of the rivers are high. We probably still got another week, and lo and behold, look at the radar and look what's coming at us.
Oh,
we got
mercy.
another one headed. Our poor brothers over in Louisiana, I tell you what, man, I feel so bad for them. Because here comes another one.
It's been a weird year. There's been a whole lot of storms, but they all seem to be headed to the same place. They've all been in the Gulf. We haven't had one get close to us in the Atlantic.
Oh, I know that. And the bad part about it is you get a community that's hit and they keep getting hit. They don't even have time to recover.
No, they sure don't. And I'm afraid I'd be awfully tempted to take my family and just get on out of there. But fortunately, I'm hoping that the Mexico Beach area will be spared again this year. And every degree that water drops, we get a little more safe.
Absolutely. That's very true. And, we've had a nice week of a couple of cold fronts. So we're feeling pretty good. And actually, I'm a little bit surprised that we're getting this next round of storms because of the cool temperatures.
Thank you so much, Kevin. We appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week, brother. Well, that concludes our trip around the state this week, and quite a trip it was. I tell you what, the mullet run still going strong. Don't miss it. even if you don't fish, go down to the beach and watch. If you got clear water, if you got fairly light winds, go down and watch the tarpon, the sharks, the jacks, the kingfish, the everything just ripping through these schools of mullet. It is nature at its finest. And we heard that all the way from Jacksonville down through Miami. The whole East Coast seems to be awash in mullet. Get into the Keys, and the swordfish have been kind of hit or miss, but the blackfin tuna have been just as steady as they could be. Come around to the Southwest and 10,000 Islands, it is the hunt for red October. Both the guys down there reported excellent red fishing all up and down the Southwest coast, up into the West Central, where Ray Markham attributes a lot of that to the closure of the fisheries this year. You take the pressure off the fish, folks, they do better. We've got to learn responsible management that allows guys to fish and keeps plenty of fish in the water. Head on up into the Big Bend. It starts to get a little bit rough. It's been sloppy out there, been tough for the guys to get offshore, but there are plenty of vermilions and a few grouper when they do get there. As for Tyler Massey, we need to congratulate him. He was a little too busy this week as he's taking his baby girl home from the hospital tonight. Congratulations to Tyler and his lovely wife. Hey, it's been a lot of fun tonight, traveling around the state, keeping track of where the mullet are and where the fish are biting. We do this each and every week because of the sponsorship of Yamaha. Reliability starts here. Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And Young Boats. You want to check out the finest in flat span offshore hybrids, check out youngboats.com. And if you've got a question about anywhere in the state of Florida this week, you want to know what's happening in Miami, you considering that trip to the Keys, just drop us a note at Shelby, SHELBY, at floridasportsman.com and ask us what's going on. We'll hit up our action spotter and find out for you. Until next week, I'm Captain Rick Riles for Florida Sportsman. We'll see you on the Rip.